Hi everybody, and welcome to this new episode of the FLOWERBX series. Today, Positive Luxury's co-founder and CEO Diana Verde Nieto will be joined by Whitney Bromberg Hawkings, CEO and founder of FLOWERBX, Mina Guli, ultra runner and founder of Thirst, and Matteo Capellini, associate partner at Bain Company, to discuss the importance of adaptation in the face of adversity. So what has 2020 taught us about business survival? Over to you, Diana.
Thank you very much, Claudia, and thank you very much, Matteo, Mina, and Whitney for joining us today. It's a great privilege to be here with you. And obviously, 2020 has been for all of us a white knuckle ride, I guess. Sometimes good, sometimes not so great. But I think adaptation is the one thing that we all have in common. So I'd like to start with Matteo, because you are the man of the insights, as you are working at Bain. So what are your biggest insights and learnings from 2020?
Well, thanks for having me first. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I think that 2020 has been a learning and insightful year, hasn't it? But maybe as we're not through it yet, and we don't know how many surprises 2020 will reserve for us, and we're not through the pandemic yet, I think it would be good to start from a lesson that we learned from the past, from the previous crisis. And what we saw is that there's always a constant. There are always winners and losers. And the winners are always those that are able to adapt and capitalize on the lesson learned. And the losers are those who maybe failed to adapt, or those who took a little bit more time to understand that they have to adapt. And now that we have a lot of years of history after the last crisis, the financial crisis of 2008, what we saw is that in the 15 years after that crisis, those that we call the winners, those companies and businesses that really were able to adapt, in the following 15 years grew 3 to 4 times faster than the ones that we call the losers. Now, this crisis, 2020, it's quite different from the last one and the previous one, because it threatened one of the most basic human needs, which is health and sometimes survival itself. So the first thing that we learned this year is the importance for business of protecting their people. And in this regard, I think that this year has been a really defining year in terms of employer brand perspective. Again, there have been a lot of business who are very good at this, that really put people first. And if we look at that from a mere numeric perspective, a real even business perspective, what they achieved was to increase their employee engagement score, which relates ultimately to long-term profitability of the company. And then there were companies that did not so well, who failed to recognize the importance for employees of feeling protected or feeling taken care for by their employers. And so this is probably the first big lesson that we learned this year. Now, if we go back in time in late February, March, when in Europe at least this crisis started to appear, the first weeks, the first months were focused on protecting people, as we said, businesses, ensuring cash availability, and cash is always the king metric in moments of crisis, and staying close to customers and suppliers. And I think here comes the second lessons that we learned this year. It's about the importance, or better said, the accelerated importance of being able for business to talk to their consumers directly, especially in a setting where physical interaction is just not possible. And I'm pretty sure we will see big investments in the coming months and years on digital, because it's proven now that those businesses that had a direct and close relationship with consumers proved to be more resilient and adapted much, much better to this new normal. And finally, and probably the biggest learning this year, it's linked to the importance of having a vision for what we call retooling for the new world. Now, the world that will emerge after this will be different, maybe not so dramatically different, but a few trends that were already there have been accelerated a lot. And today is a time to plan for being relevant for the consumer of that new world. And there are three things that demand increased attention, which are prediction, adaptation, and resiliency.
Thank you so much. And I was listening to you very actively because I think you're absolutely right in terms of this piece of adaptation and speed. And business needs to really realize that there is going to be a new normal, and there is nothing to do with the world we left behind. And I'd like to turn to Whitney because you are an entrepreneur and a businesswoman, and you have a happy business, because flowers is something that always put a smile on people's faces. So how did you adapt? What are the changes that you had to make? And when did you realize that perhaps you had to change or perhaps not? But can you tell us a little bit more about your journey?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thanks so much for having me here with these amazing guests. I realized like pretty immediately, whatever, it's March 21st, when like almost £1 million of events that we had coming up pulled out immediately overnight. It wasn't even postponing, it was like canceling, because we had the Chelsea Flower Show coming up, which is always a key seasonal event for us. You know, we do sort of facades of, I'm sure you've seen Annabelle's restaurant. I mean, we do like huge, massive facades. So I realized overnight, wow, half of my business is gone, because it was literally B2B was half of our business. And I'm like, how am I going to make that up? I mean, we aren't a well-funded enough business to float for 6 months with no cash. Like that's not the nature of a startup. So I realized really quickly, we need to, the B2C is working, which was the direct to consumer part of our brand. People, as you say, needed flowers more than ever because it was Mother's Day. I mean, that was literally Mother's Day right then. So it's like people couldn't go see mom, people couldn't go see grandmom. So all of a sudden our B2C business just went sort of parabolic, mercifully. I didn't realize that was going to happen. So I had, the dreaded like, oh my God, this is the end of the business. But B2C went, parabolic, which I made the decision then, like, we're going to focus on B2C. We're going to put all of our energy, we're going to pivot our entire business to direct to consumer B2C. And not only are we going to focus on B2C, we're going to grow B2C because the opportunity is right now. So we launched the East Coast of the US, the West Coast of the US, interviewing like managers, packers by Zoom, which is not without its challenges, especially because we work with such a physical, beautiful, as you say, product. Like how someone, handles flowers is key. But we managed to sort of lean into what was working and just take advantage of this crazy landscape. So that's in a nutshell what I've been doing the past 9 months.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to turn to Mina. I mean, Mina, you are an activist, an environmentalist, and although you don't like me to call you an athlete, I think you are an athlete. So your mental strength is something that I personally admire beyond, because you have run all the continents, you have run most of the rivers, you have run 62 marathons in 62 days. I mean, you name it. So how do you find the mental strength to condition yourself in these challenging times and in order to push yourself to something that perhaps, I bet that after 62 marathon, your body's like, actually leave me alone. So where do you dig deep from?
Thanks, Diana. And just echoing Whitney's comments about how lovely it is to have an opportunity to really reflect on 2020 as the year, not only a year filled with trauma and heartache and challenges for so many of us, but the lessons that we can take away from that. I think it's easy to look back at tough times and find it very hard to see the light. And the reality is that for most of us, if we actually sit back and reflect on the things that have happened over the last 9 months, there are moments, maybe for some of us, they're few and far between, but there are moments of light at the end of this tunnel. And I think we must remember that and must remember to reflect on that at the end. Just what's interesting to me about some of the comments that Matteo and Whitney raised is that it makes me think about a conversation I actually had with my coach. And Diana, you said, how do I feel when my body is yelling and shouting at me at marathon, 62? Actually, it starts from the very moment my alarm goes off at 4:30 in the morning and I have to get out of bed and I don't want to do it. And it's not just my body that shouts at me, it's also my mind and my willpower and the kind of notion of what am I doing this for? And the thing that I'm reminded of is this moment when I was having this conversation with my coach of, wow, 2020 is a really tough year. The expeditions that I'd had have been cancelled, like Whitney. You watch the quilt that you've made fragment in front of your eyes. And we were having a discussion and he said to me, Mina, the athletes that I have that are adjusting best to this situation are the ones that realize that this is the new normal, that this is the current state of affairs. The ones that are able to put their head, their heart, and their body in the place right here, right now, and to realize that we need to adjust and pivot and amend our lives according to this new reality. Those that are finding it the hardest are the ones that believe that hope is a strategy, that are sitting there waiting for a new day, that are waiting for things to go back to normal, that are waiting for life to return as it was. And as Matteo said, life isn't going to return. Life will be different. Life will change. And I think that for all of us, if there's a lesson that we can learn, it is we need to adjust to where we are today and stop hoping that things will change tomorrow.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to turn to you, Matteo, because you are an associate partner at Bain's, and you work with businesses, small, big, and you have a very incredible, I guess, bird's eye view of the future. Please tell me you do. So, what are the most transformational changes that you see in businesses so far, and what do you think is coming?
Well, I think that there are probably three main transformational changes that we've seen this year accelerate momentum, because there were things already ongoing, but what did this pandemic was really accelerated things forward. And the first one is related to digital transformation. There was a joke that went viral a few months ago. It was someone asking who was the sponsor of the digital transformation of the company. Was the CIO, the CTO, the CEO, the C whatever? And the answer was no, it was COVID, which is absolutely true. What happened in February, March in Europe was that in a few weeks, we fast forwarded for 5 years in time in terms of digital transformation. We saw businesses sending out recently bought laptop to Salesforce or customer care agents that changed their even their daily job to adapt to this new situation. And this is going to stay. Probably the most transformational change is about the mindset, because we proved ourselves that certain technologies that we weren't sure, generally speaking, that were the right technologies that were able to replace other processes and things, they proved to be successful. We've been working from home so many months now, and at least for us with great success. So digital transformation is for sure one of the biggest. Then, of course, sustainability. And you know that very well, but probably at the beginning of this crisis, we had this concern or question if the cash tension, the bottom line tension that businesses will face in the following months would slow that process, would slow that transformational changes and that transformational journey towards sustainability that many brands already started or were planning to start. But I think that a few months in, the answer is clear, and the consumer pool is so strong here that As a matter of fact, companies are accelerating their efforts on sustainability because this pandemic really strengthened that trend. And again, like in digital, probably put us forward 5 years in just a matter of weeks. And finally, a very important transformational change that we saw is about ways of working or agile ways of working. There's a metaphor that I heard recently that is very, very on point, which is it's not anymore about big fish versus small fish, but it's fast fish versus slow fish. And it's really the speed of adaptation. It's becoming crucial. The yearly planning, if you think about businesses, usually what businesses do is planning yearly and multi-yearly. It just makes no sense in 2020. Now businesses are building scenarios and are planning short term with very high degrees of flexibility. And we believe this is going to stay. Obviously, we will go back planning for, let's say, long term, but this capability of change the plans and adapt very quickly and in a flexible way is key. And so what businesses need to build are capabilities for fast learning and adaptation, and design the business models to be resilient to a broader and more severe set of shocks that maybe we will face in the future. But once we embed these capabilities, then the way businesses will react and adapt to new challenges will be different.
Thank you very much. And absolutely, I cannot agree with you. The entrepreneurial mindset is absolutely a must for CEOs today. Is really definitely required. And sustainability is, well, I mean, we have been so busy. I mean, it's been definitely on the fore. But I think the big transformation yet not has started, which is actually understanding that it's not about how much you talk about sustainability, but how do you activate sustainability, how you start doing sustainability. Because I think that when people understand, or business leaders understand the dependencies that we have with nature, and the urgency that it is that we have as businesses to really embed or unlock those dependencies and internalize them into our own businesses, is when people will realize, right, stop talking and start doing. So I am hoping that 2021 will become that year of action, actually. And talking about action, let's turn to our action woman. And Mina, I know that you had incredible difficult times at some time last year or late the year before last, where you were committed to run 100 marathons, and your body just went, and your wins has been clipped, and then you had this moment, this COVID moment, in which your whole world changed, and that has taken a lot to adapt. And I'm very keen that you share with all of us again, you know, how did you cope? What are the coping mechanisms that you had in order to actually transform your life?
Yeah, if there was ever a lesson in things don't go according to plan, it was my running dry expedition. I set out, as you said, to run 100 marathons in 100 days to show what it means to be 100% committed to something, and in my case, water. And it was an enormous deal for me, because even though people label me as a runner and as this crazy like athlete person, in reality, I only do this because of water, because I'm committed and passionate about a world where we use water sustainably. And so for me, this whole thing is a gigantic effort. It takes a huge amount of planning. If you get to the beginning of the expedition, the reality is that's the tip of the iceberg, that the vast majority of the work has already happened, like in business, like in business planning and business strategizing. So at marathon number 62, I found myself, instead of running, getting up to the next day to run a marathon for day 63, I was taking a trip to the hospital. I was diagnosed with a broken leg, and I sat in my wheelchair in South Africa, in Cape Town, in the hospital. and I felt that my entire world had collapsed to black around me. And over the next few days, I was forced to confront this very tough sense of personal failure. Failure not only that I had not done what I would set out to do, but failure that I'd let down my team, let down my community, let down everything we'd all, hundreds of us, worked for. And it was a real kind of moment of darkness. And I think from this moment of darkness, when I thought that my world had ended, I realized a couple of things. The first one was Thomas Fuller said, the darkest hour is the one before dawn. When I sat in that wheelchair in Cape Town, I had a moment for reflection. And what I realized was that I need to think not about the daily grind of getting up and doing my marathons, not about, I need to tell a story tomorrow. I need to do these things today. It's all about the profit. It's all about the strategy I've got for the next week. The reality is I had to think about the places I wanted to go and what it would take to get me there. And in my case, it's about solving the water crisis. It's not about 38 days of marathons. It's actually about the next 38 years of mobilizing for change. And keeping my eyes focused on the prize meant that I had to learn that hoping for something different was always going to set me up for failure and disappointment. Hoping that the next day I was going to rise out miraculously of that wheelchair with a 15-centimeter break in my femur was never going to happen. But adjusting and saying, tomorrow there will be a brighter day. How do I make that happen? How do I make that sunshine? And how do I prepare myself for when that will happen? Was kind of was a moment of catharsis, and also a moment of learning how to transform and pivot what I've been doing into something different. So the second thing I learned was that when it comes to things that are different, or comes to evolution of approach or business, or in my case, campaign, sometimes we need to step aside to give space to others to step up. And when others step up, magic can happen. So I was unable to run. Day 63, in the hospital, I had tears pouring down my face. I thought I had failed. And my team came in and they said, today we'll run your marathon for you. It's day 63, let us do the miles. On day 64, they were joined by people from across Cape Town. On day 65, people from around the world started to join. And every single day, more and more people joined our campaign. And every day that passed, I realized sometimes we need to recognize that change, that leadership is not about us as individuals. It's about how we can create and build a sense of community and a sense of team. And if I had not sat in that wheelchair, I would have battled and fought. And the reality was, by stepping aside, I enabled others to take some of the weight. Someone said to me at the end of my run, individually we can make an impact, but together we can change the world. And the reality is, if there's one thing I learned from that entire process of breaking myself and re-emerging, is that the wings that I thought were clipped were actually put back together by the community of the thousands of people around the world who stepped up for water in my place.
I mean, that is intense, and it's I guess it's an incredible learning. Is to let go and just let others to take over. And thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for the vulnerability of sharing your story, actually. So I appreciate that. So I guess I'd like to go to Whitney. I mean, what are your last thoughts on how to transform and adapt in businesses or in business?
I just want to say that story, Mina, there are so many lessons in that as a leader, so many lessons on being adaptable. I mean, it's so relevant to sort of what we've all had to do. You have all your hopes and dreams in something, and then, you sort of have to do a 180. So I think, first of all, we're lucky that we're a small team. And I loved what Matteo said about it's like who swims faster. And because we're small and lean, I think that enables us to be more nimble. than a larger corporation where, you know, to move anything, it takes days, or us, it takes minutes. It's like, okay, we're going to change, we're going to do this, and we can all sort of change direction really quickly. So I think that leanness is really something that's helped us, and something that's key to, even as we grow, to stay adaptable and not create these long plans where to change them, you know, back to what Matteo said, it takes months and months and 50 people making a decision. I also loved what Mina said about empowering your team. I mean, my team has blown me away every single day. And it's not because I was there sort of, and I always felt I needed to sort of micromanage everyone and make sure everything that went out, I was seeing everything. And obviously throughout COVID, I didn't want the warehouse team to get sick. I have 3 kids. I didn't want to go and infect them unnecessarily. So I tried to stay away, and man, did they step up. I mean, they all are superheroes as far as I'm concerned. So, and that's in, you know, in our warehouse teams across the world. So, I think all of the lessons are very clear out of this. It's just putting them into practice that sometimes, you know, I mean, I initially felt resistance to it, and I felt like, oh, I can't possibly, but I think once you decide to go with it, and back to what Mina said, you know, she can't run. So like, that's the reality, and letting her team step up and turn it into something bigger. Because I think COVID has actually enabled us to become much bigger, much faster. So it's looking at the crisis, looking at the circumstance, and trying to find the opportunity in it, really, because there is an opportunity in everything. It's sometimes really hard to see, but there is an opportunity in everything. So it's finding that opportunity, and not, as Mina said initially, just wishing everything would go back to normal. It's not going back to normal.
No, absolutely. And I think this is what's happening. Is just like, I guess what COVID has done is give the opportunity for younger people with great passion and enthusiasm to actually participate at, you know, at very senior level, and giving ideas and so on. So this collaborative approach, and this kind of narrowing this very hierarchical pyramid that somehow we build in organizations, is what has accelerated, I guess, the change that Matteo is talking about, and pushing from the ground, and pushing, like, I mean, the whole thing has been transformational. Thank you so much, Whitney. And I'd like to go to Mina before going to Matteo. And like, what are your thoughts as an athlete and as an activist? I mean, what do you thought about what businesses should do to adapt? What are the skills that you have learned and you apply in your sports could be transferable to business leaders?
I think that the common theme from Matteo and Whitney is twofold. The first one is that there are glimmers of light even in places we don't expect to see them. Sometimes we need to open our eyes wider, and we need to see through the darkness to see where they are. And if there's one lesson I learned from running, even at the moments of darkness, when I'm out there running crazy early in the morning, and all I see is the illumination from my head torch, the reality is it's light. The reality is that there are moments, and we need to learn to leverage those. The second is that it is all about people. People build businesses. People build consumer movements. People build change. And we need to focus more on the people that help us to achieve what we're doing than we ever have before. I think about this in the context of running. If I want to go to the other side of a canyon and I can see the path, there is no point me yelling from the other side of the canyon to my team, hey guys, come over here, because some of them will get eaten by wolves or bears. Some of them will fall into the river. Some of them will get lost, and some will give up and go home. In order for us to really transform and change our businesses towards the light that we've identified, even that little glimmer of light, we need to go all the way back to the other side of the canyon, and we need to take our teams with us. This is a journey. It might be a fast journey for most companies, as Matteo said, there's the fast, rapid movements, but the faster we're going, the faster we need to bring our team with us. We cannot afford to be having a picnic on the other side of the canyon, hoping that our team will come and join us. This is a moment in time for us to join together, to say we are where we are, but we are where we are together. and let us face the future as one unit for change.
That is incredibly profound. Thank you so much. Matteo, your last thought before we go into the Q&A. So over to you.
Well, I love what Mina just said. It's all about people. Organizations are made by of people, and I think that when it comes to adaptation, you can build some capabilities here, but at the end of the day, it is probably all about the mindset. Having that insurgent mindset and speed to adaptation that is key in these times. And probably one of the things that we will see in the future will be this kind of soft skill of people. So this insurgent mindset to achieve more importance in the way companies will recruit people and we will want to have from their people. So probably this experience in 2020 will leave us also a different balance in the importance of the different skill set of people that we will recruit in the next years.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to stay with you because I've got questions here. How do you believe businesses can continue to innovate their sustainability effort next year while still trying to be able to trade in these, challenging financial times?
Well, I think it's a matter, well, it's difficult, let's not avoid that, but I think it's a matter of perspective as well, because some businesses are still probably in that process of understanding how strategical is sustainability for the future. And when something is strategical, you don't ask yourself, how can I do that? I mean, if you're a fashion brand in times of, in a difficult time, you don't question how or if you will produce your next season. But it's something that you have to do. So it's a trade-off between finding resources, but the level of how much strategical is sustainability for the long-term survival of the companies, put it in the first place as these activities you have to find space for next year.
Thank you. And actually, the same question goes to Whitney. This is unplanned, but in terms of, what do you believe businesses can continue to innovate their sustainability efforts while still trying to achieve their financial, during these challenging financial times?
That's such a good question. And it's a question I ask myself every day. First of all, I think the consumer has a responsibility to play a part in that. And I, for one, as a consumer, I'm happy to pay slightly more for something that I know comes from a sustainable source. So I think the responsibility does have to go to the consumer as well as the supplier. And I think people are making those choices now where they are choosing something that is better for the planet. It makes them feel better about themselves, even if it's slightly more expensive. So that's one way. Second of all, I think we've defined internally sustainability as a cultural value of the company. So it's like everything from the creative team. I mean, this is a perfect example. Last night we were emailing and we're doing gift cards, and it was like we had 5 options of the gift cards and how they were going to be made. And then that has to do, the part of the decision-making process has to be sustainability, period. It used to only be beauty. Now it has to be part of the decision-making process of every single department in the company. And once you make that a part of the decision-making process, then it becomes ingrained as a cultural value in what you're doing. So those are really the ways that I'm trying to embed that in what we're doing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, of course it does answer my questions. Thank you so much. Mina, I mean, what was the most testing part of the 6 Rivers run, and what techniques did you use to get through it?
So I think when we're faced with these incredibly critical crucible moments, when all you want to do is sit by and give up, and I've had many of those moments, to be really honest. I had a moment where I was in the Atacama Desert. I was surrounded. I gave every desert that I ran in a name of a color, and this was the cappuccino desert. So if you think about like the cappuccino in your coffee cup, the whole, as far as you can see, there was just cappuccino colored sand. There was a straight dusty path in front of me that seemed to go all the way to the horizon. It was slightly uphill. It was blowing a gale with sand. It felt like I was running into sandpaper. And on my right hand side, about 400 meters away, there was a massive road where there were trucks carrying ore and carrying different things up to the mining communities. And I sat there. It was my 6th desert, so I'd already run through 6 deserts. And I got to the point where I just sat down beside the road and said, I can't go any further. This is it. I can't do this. I'm done. I have nothing left in my tank. And one of my team sat down beside me and he said, Mina, tell me again why you're doing this. And I said to him, Kelvin, I'm doing this because of the kids, because I want the next generation to grow up with an ability to achieve their hopes and dreams. I don't want them to be limited in what they want to do in their lives and what they can do by their ability to access our planet's resources. I want them to be fettered only by their ability to dream their dreams. And he said, if you think about that, do you think that you can take another step? And I thought to myself, you know what? When you have a dream, when you have a purpose and you have a passion, the reality is the perseverance will come. Because that purpose and that passion, in those times when you think you have nothing, will give you the wings to achieve what you never thought was possible, to go places you never believed you could go to take the steps you never thought you could take, and to actually persevere and get through to the end of whatever it is, whatever goal, whatever ambition, whatever business, whatever hardship you're going through.
That's amazing. And I mean, I know you for a long time now, and I know that before you started this, you didn't even run to the bus. So the fact that you have run all the deserts, it's really, I mean, you always blow my mind. Thank you very much for sharing. And we are running out of time. I don't know how, but we are. So I'd like to ask this question to everyone. Tools, how do you do it? You know, what advice would you give people to adapt fast, adapt successfully, and not to leave anyone behind? So Matteo, I'd like to start with you.
Well, I think that what you need, if I look at it from a business perspective, because you can answer this question also from a personal perspective, but from a business perspective, what you really need is what we call a future back view of course, your industry. It depends on which industry you are working in and which geography, but thinking about how my industry will look like 10 years from now, it's a great starting point, because it will in a way keep you out of that never-ending problem solving of the day-to-day of next day. Yes, but I can't do this because. So thinking future back, it's the first enabler, but then obviously you have to complement this with a present forward and more pragmatic vision. So in order to get there, what I need to do in the next 3 months, 3 years, 7 years, and then 10 years. So I think my 2 cents here are about combining a long-term vision, which is often missing, with a very pragmatic and day-to-day approach.
Thank you so much. Mina, over to you.
Yeah, Diana, I think it's 3 things, basically. I think that the first one is to remember that we can't afford to do things the way that our parents and our grandparents did them before us. We need to do things differently. We need to pivot, and we need to change according to the circumstances we find ourselves in. The second one is we need to listen. We need to listen to consumers. We need to listen to our stakeholders. We need to listen to our team, our management, and we need to find people around us that we can listen to because we value their views and opinions. The reality is that there is a huge amount of input and feedback we can take from the people around us if only we stop for a moment to listen to what they have to say. And the third thing is innovation and the power of innovation. I think that we need to be prepared to innovate, and we need to be prepared to innovate at speed. And the more we can, as Matteo and as Whitney have both said, create structures of our organizations that enable us to be nimble and flexible, no matter how big we are. But if we can move, I am not the lightest, like weediest runner in the world, but the reality is that I can learn, I can do my drills, I can structure things so that I can move more quickly. And I think we need to be able to do the same thing in business. We cannot afford to be sitting at a bus stop, watching a bus come in and watching a bus leave and not be on that bus. We need to be able to recognize the opportunities and act quickly to take advantage of them. And the only other thing I would add to this whole conversation is I cannot tell you, Diana, how many people I hear look at me and go, Mina, what you're doing is so amazing. I wish I could do that. I'm like, well, okay, well, why don't you? I'm not a runner. I'm not fast. I hate running, actually. I didn't grow up as a runner. I'm really slow. I didn't go on Strava until just recently because I was afraid everybody would see just how slow and bad at running I actually am. And I would shatter all these illusions. And they said to me, oh, but I could never do that. You must be really good. I'm like, no, look at my data. No. And they said to me, oh, if only I had a better knee, or if only I didn't have a back problem, or if only. And I'm like, the final thing in all of this, whether you're an individual or you're a business, is no excuses. If there is something you want and you have the purpose, the passion to do it, then perseverance will come. There can be no excuse. There can be no excuse for not achieving. There can be no excuse for not taking advantage of that light at the end of the tunnel, even if it's just a chink. There can be no excuse for living the lives and building the businesses that we want to build and that we want to live. Life is too short. This is not a dress rehearsal.
That's amazing. I want the t-shirts. No excuse. I'm gonna put it on the bathroom mirror. So every morning when I'm thinking whether to go for a run or not, I'll think of you. And thank you, Mina. The last word to you, Whitney.
God, it's really impossible to add on top of that. I think Mina summed it all up. But I do have to echo what she said about, I'm not a businesswoman. She's not a runner. None of us were born. I mean, it's basically getting up and faking it, and not even faking it, but doing it until you believe it. I'm not now faking I'm a businesswoman. I am a businesswoman, but I didn't start out on this journey thinking I was a businesswoman. So I think that's my advice to anyone out there. It's like, you've got to believe in yourself, and you can become any of these things that you want to become, and there are no excuses not to become that person or that thing or the runner or the entrepreneur or any of those things. And then I think the last point is to really it's really counterintuitive to go faster right now, where the opportunity is, because part of me wants to hibernate. And I know so many friends with businesses that are like, let's go into hibernation, let's preserve cash, let's all just go to sleep and we'll come out the other side. But I think the key for us and our current, knock on wood, success is just accelerating when it's against everything I feel like right now. It terrifies me, to go faster when everyone else slows down. So I think that's what I'm waking up and trying to do every day. And it's terrifying and thrilling in equal measure.
Thank you very much. And, and though it's counterintuitive, it's probably not. I was talking to the CEO of Conservation International literally 2 days ago, and he is a cyclist. And he said to me, you will never overtake people on the descent. The descent is fast and easy. You will always take people on in the very hard miles when you're going uphill and your body wants to give up and your head wants to give up. So just you have to keep going. That's how you win a race. So yeah, keep following your gut, and I think that's what we all need to do as well, because we all have it in us. And there's one last point I'd like to add, because this has been a very insightful and actually inspiring session in all levels for me personally. But I think the last point is to add what Mina said is, you have to get your teams to believe in themselves too. You have to let them unlock that spirit, because if they also believe in themselves, you have the A team. And that's, I think, what we all need to do, is just how do you build those incredible people that you have around you to even be even more incredible. So yeah. Well, again, thank you so much. And I'd like to pass this for a closing to one of my incredible members of the team. Over to Claudia.
Thank you so much, Matteo, Mina, and Whitney. Thank you all for joining us today. On Thursday, the 3rd of December, we'll be hosting a screening of WWF's latest film, Our Planet Too Big to Fail, followed by a panel discussion. So sign up to our newsletter today to receive your special invite. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Stay safe. Bye.